Testing? Oh, there we go. Okay. I think I'm live, question mark? It's very difficult to tell. This is my first time doing this. So, let me know if I'm live, anybody. Yay! Okay, it worked. Indeed, I am live. Awesome. Okay. Perfect. Hello, folks. How's my sound? Hello, Manuel. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Longbow. Hello, Magic Tort. I missed some people at the beginning. Summer, Mr. Steak, Katini, Mr. William White. Oh boy, there's a lot of folks. Wow. Okay. Cool. Not my real name. I don't know if I believe you. Either you're live or I've sustained a serious head injury. It could be both, David. It's difficult to say. Okay. Awesome. In the future, other live streams will be more elaborate. But in this particular case, I just wanted to get everything up and running. This is going to be, in a moment, I'm gonna set up a 25,000 subscriber live stream. But first I needed to make sure I could actually stream. Awesome. Yeah, I've got a video camera going. It's my brother-in-law. That door right there is his room. So, do we offer improv prompts? You can. I don't think I'll do anything with them, but you can. I have the prettiest eyes on YouTube. Thank you so much. They're mine. Hello, Joey's Movie Blog. Yes, okay, perfect. Whew, huge relief. Literally, went and got myself a new ring light today to get a much better setup than I've had in the past, which was not going to do it for today. Oreo is in the living room harassing her brothers. Not that I would say that she's a bully. I would never say that about my dog, whom I love. But she's out there harassing her brothers. Okay, you folks, I'm trying to get better about saying that. You folks are in the backstage right now because I'm going to do a Q&A at 3 o'clock. I'm actually going to switch to a different live stream for that. It'll be on the same website. I don't need to change. In fact, can I just change the title here? Can I just make this? I can. Let me just do that, and we'll just keep this stream going. Why not? Why change? Q&A celebrating so the people who watch this VOD are going to be like, wait, why did this start with him saying this is just a test, it's not going to be the real live stream, and then it went for however long? And that's why, because I was going to set up a separate live stream, but that just seems silly now. We have people in the chat. I was going to, so here's what happened. I was going to do a test live stream yesterday, and it didn't work because I had to get verified through YouTube, basically. I don't know exactly what that means, just to get verified to live stream. It was like a 24-hour countdown. I don't know. Maybe it's just to prevent bots. I'm not sure. For a test stream, it's going to be a long one. Yes, exactly. But so I was going to do a test stream maybe a day before the actual live stream or an hour before, but at this point, it's 15 minutes away. We just might as well just start a little early. And as people arrive, they will be welcome to show up. So that's what happened. We're figuring it all out as we go. It's 4:45 in Cancun, Mexico. Here it is 2:45 because I'm in Los Angeles. You played your first game of D&D last week. You had so much fun, and my videos have been so helpful. I'm so glad to hear that. Extremely Neoclassical. Were you a player or a GM? Why change? Very American of me. Yeah, I mean, kind of no matter what I'm referring to. Yes. I think that is probably accurate. A rogue assassin and getting ready to multi-class as a Gloomstalker Ranger. Any advice? I'll come back to that. I just wanted to make sure I read it aloud so that I heard it out loud before I say, we're going to go ahead and do a Q&A. So hit me up and just start sending me questions. I'll answer 25 questions. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do only 25 questions. That's very silly. But I am going to do a dice giveaway later this month. Well, in April, technically. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Remind me to do that. Thoughts on MCDM doing their own RPG? I will have a lot more thoughts about it once I see the RPG. I think everyone should be doing their own RPG right now. I have no strong desire to make one, but if people have designs on one, and he's been talking about wanting to do a live stream for years. Sorry, not live stream. Do a game system for years. So, it's time for him to finally take the opportunity to do it. You asked as Oreo. That counts as a question. There's another question I saw a moment ago before I come back to the Gloomstalker. I don't really have a ton of advice about the Gloomstalker, honestly, because I haven't played a Gloomstalker Ranger or a Rogue. Have I played a Rogue Assassin? I don't think I have. So unfortunately, I don't really have a ton of advice that's like class specific or that is subclass specific. I've heard good things about the Gloomstalker. I think what I would say regarding the assassin, and maybe this is because I watch a lot of Critical Role and I have a lot of feelings based on, having seen the assassin class be played through in campaign 1 is, there are going to be times when the DM says, no, you can't do that thing. Just don't take it personally, and try to make sure if you feel like it's a miscommunication, clarify and move on. But also make sure that you are using that as an opportunity in the future to be a little bit clearer with your DM about what it is you mean. If you're asking for something you think is reasonable and they think is not, maybe that is the problem. And that is an issue I have seen come up every once in a while. Florian sent $20 for the coffee fund. Thank you so much, Florian. And said that they love my videos. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, where did we pop off? Opinion on cats. The animal or the musical? I don't have any strong feelings about cats other than that my wife is deathly allergic. So when I visit friends who have cats, I need to keep a distance if I'm going to see her later in the day because the hair will carry with me. On the musical, I have no feelings on that musical one way or the other. It is a very strange thing that it got turned into a movie, and the fact that we now have a phrase like the butthole cut in popular vernacular because of it is just deeply funny to me. Who's my favorite CR character? Well, okay, with the caveat that we all know that Jester is the best character. I'm kidding, but kind of not. I don't know if this would always be my answer. It depends on the day you ask me, I'm sure. But I love Ford's exasperated dad energy. And he doesn't have it all the time, but one of the moments that sums it up for me so well is the Fluffernutter scene. When he's just, I'm not going to give any spoilers if people haven't seen Campaign 2, but just his exasperated dad energy really speaks to me. So Pokemon Morty, pardon me, is that's my favorite CR character. Jason G said boo. I don't know if he's disagreeing with something I said or is a ghost, and I'm going to assume that he disagreed with something I said because if he's a ghost, I feel very sad. What's the most emotionally dramatic moment I've experienced playing D&D? Let me know if that mouth raspberry was bad audio. I need to get better. I can't edit those out. I mean, I can, but not of this video. The most emotionally dramatic moment. When I was a player in Curse of Strahd, we had really a lot of intense, dramatic scenes, but I also did an actual play show really early in 5th edition, probably from 2015 to 2018 was that campaign, where I was a player yeah, maybe early 2019. I'm trying to remember. Um, and there were some really excellent um, experiences that we had in that game. Culminating with a player's heroic sacrifice, which was really emotional and powerful. And that was also the first time that I believe that was the first time, not the end of the not the end of the campaign, but partway through is the first time I'd ever had a character die. My character died a lot on that show, it turned out. But my character death was like really, really powerful on that show. And I'd actually had a prop in the game. I had a letter that I'd written. It was a podcast, but I'd written like a nice letter in case of my death because of an earlier adventure, and they'd never read it, but it still ended up being relevant. They found it on my body, 10 episodes later, and it was a heartfelt apology for getting them into trouble, which still turned out to be relevant when I did die. And then within the hour, I got reincarnated, so now I was a halfling instead of a human. And then I had to go to a trial for my crimes as, in my backstory. And that letter ended up getting admitted into evidence, and it had been less than an hour since my fellow players had found it. That was a really awesome moment. So yeah, that would be my answer. Summer Bradshaw, thank you so much for asking. Adele Redwinters asks, thanks to the 5e kerfuffle I've been using the last few months to try to get some other TTRPGs, either older D&D editions. 4e is fantastic. 4e is fantastic. I should say, I talk a lot about how good 4e is. I haven't played it in a long time, or even reread it in a long time, except for like little sections I go back to for videos. So I should replay it and reread it. But I'm glad there's a 4e renaissance happening that is understanding what 4e was actually trying to do, which a lot of people didn't get at the time, which, fair enough. It was very different from D&D. Any TTRPGs I've been trying out recently or want to try out? I'm playing Monster of the Week. I think that was already in the works before the OGL stuff happened, so thankfully nothing had to change there. I got all of the Pathfinder PDFs. I haven't read them yet, but I got all of the Pathfinder PDFs through the Humble Bundle that they did. I'm really, really looking forward to... what is it called? Fantasy Age 2nd Edition. Because I've never played Fantasy Age, but I played Dragon Age, which is basically the same game, just with like an IP that I was not a gamer at the time. I still have never played that many video games. I don't have a lot of strong feelings towards Dragon Age, but I liked the system a lot. And so I'm really excited to try Fantasy Age 2nd Edition. That's coming out pretty soon, I think. And man, I'm currently reading Shadow Dark, which is on Kickstarter right now. It's incredible. It's really good. I've been curious about the OSR ever since the video I did last year about like how real time can be used to sort of enhance games in between, which is very works for certain games more than others. And I've been interested in OSR, but there's a lot of stuff in the OSR that's just not going to be my thing. Anything that's trying to replicate exactly how the mechanics worked in first edition, second edition, where it's like THAC0 and negative armor class and all these other... that's just one example. There's a bunch of others where I'm just not interested in that. But I want something that functions more like 5e. I'd heard good things about Five Torches Deep. I haven't read it yet. I remember hearing something. I was like, I don't know. That's not really what I'm looking for. Now Shadow Dark is coming along, and I'm reading it. It is just like taking it's like stripping down 5e, making it way more low fantasy, soft magic, more gritty survival, but still awesome. I'm gonna have a lot to say about Shadow Dark on this channel later this year. I'm really, really enjoying it. So yeah, and those are the big ones. And I'm curious about, someone asked earlier about the MCDM RPG. I'm curious what that's gonna look like. I'm curious about sixth edition 1D&D, what that's gonna be like. I'm curious about Black Flag, but those three, I think Fantasy Age, Pathfinder, and Shadow Dark, with the caveat that I haven't read Pathfinder yet, but those are the three that I'm the most interested in right now. Ooh, and I do need to at some point read through those Marvel RPG playtests that's going on as well right now. Thoughts on separating player from character, especially for a first-time player? Be really communicative about I think it is. I think it is okay to overshare where your boundaries are. I think, or where the lines are being drawn. It's very okay, especially early on, to say, my character's about to say something. I want you to know before I do that I am so excited for this, but my character's going to be a real stick in the mud about it. Whatever. I think that's a really helpful approach. How far off from the weekly Vox Machina recaps? Manda Bear asks that. By the way, Intrusive Shadows, thank you for your question about player from character. I hope that was helpful. If it wasn't helpful enough, let me know, and we can expand on that if there's more you want to know about. How far off are we? We are almost at 330 patrons, and at 1,000 patrons, we will get weekly Critical Role Demystified episodes. And I should actually say, they're about to change Patreon in a way that annoys me. It doesn't change. It doesn't break the world or anything. It just annoys me that goals are not going to be visible anymore. But we are about 21 patrons away from me being able to invest in a new camera. We are a little less than 100 away from the funny 420 number. We are, 329 out of 500. 500 was the I can take a day off of my day job, which is not really a thing anymore. And yeah, then 1,000 patrons is Critical Role Demystified goes weekly. At 1,500 patrons, I will do companion Demystified videos about other actual plays, like other franchises, that will not take up installments of Critical Role Demystified. They'll just be ways to talk about other things. And then 2,000 patrons, which we're still ways away from, I want to start going through some of the inspirational reading books and doing sort of a book club about those. So we're making progress for sure. Have I settled on a map decision for the West Marches game? Kind of. It honestly depends on what game system I play. But if I stick with 5e, I think I have an approach that I'm pretty happy with, and I'll do videos about that later this year. Have I been keeping up with 1D&D, and do I have any strong thoughts about any pieces of it? I haven't yet to read any of the 1D&D packets, because they put out the first two while I was moving, and while I was out of town for a funeral and things like that, which is awfully rude of them not to take that into consideration. I was actually gonna do a live stream and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna talk about the 1D&D packets," and maybe I'll still do that at some point. But then the OGL stuff happened. I was like, "Oh, okay." Not an urgent need for me to read those right now. I do want to read it. I probably will still play it, even if it doesn't become my primary game. I'll probably still end up running games of 1D&D. I like to keep up with what's happening in sort of the main, most visible game. I think the most recent video from Jeremy Crawford was helpful for us to kind of get a sense of what they're going for. And I think as long as we keep in mind what people should have kept in mind with something like 4th edition, where we know what they're trying to go for, may be more heroic fantasy than what people are expecting, maybe, or assume for D&D will be by default. That would be fine. I think especially now knowing that I have other options for other kinds of games. I have Shadow Dark if I want to run a grittier, lower magic game. Fantasy Age for more heroic fantasy. So I'm curious where 1D&D is going to land on that spectrum. There's a lot more factors than just that, but I'm curious about that. Obviously, there's the other question of how much do you want to support WotC right now. So I'm still keeping up with it. I probably will still pick up the core books. We'll see what happens after that. Thoughts on controlling nerves while running combat. Galen, you say that you always get stressed that you're taking too long running enemy turns. I think the two things that I would keep in mind with that is, one, I think that probably, not knowing you well, but knowing you a little bit from our very limited time together when you asked that question, I think it depends on how many people you have on your side. So if you try running some fights with just one enemy, see how that feels. And the other thing is, and this may be worth just letting me know in the chat, and when I get caught up, I'll be able to see what your response was. I'd be very curious if you're running creatures that have a lot of complex abilities or more stripped down versions, because they are trying to release more stripped down versions in more recent books, but a lot of the ones that are in the monster manual have if they have spells, that's a lot of prep. So if you feel like that's the case, maybe try a version that is just strip away a lot of the fluff and stick with a much more meat and potatoes monster, maybe up their damage so they're still a threat. Try that and see if you feel more comfortable. If you still feel like that's the case, then that's sort of the two. Then that sort of helps you narrow in on where the issue is, right? Whether the issue is that you feel overwhelmed with the mechanics and you feel like you're maybe getting analysis paralysis, or whether you just feel like you are just generally, you're worried in general that you're taking up too much time, and it doesn't necessarily matter about the mechanics. And if that's the case, then it may just be worth asking the players, like, hey, how... No, you know what? Before you ask the players, try switching then to... actually, this would be a good approach either way. Switch to static damage, and just keep with the averages. Average damage, which is how it's presented in the monster manual. Try that and see if that feels any faster. Maybe it's the dice rolling and the counting that makes you feel more anxious. And if it's not, then what you're dealing with is just what, you've done the most efficient game turn you can. Maybe try... Here's what I would try. Take a really simple monster, something where there's very, very little, nothing you need to look up, no spells, maybe like 1 or 2 attacks, something, Ankeg or Boulette equivalent. And then every round, all you do is just roll a die to see who they're going to attack, or if there's no one immediately nearby. And then only use the static damage. If you still feel like you are taking too long, just mentally know, okay, this is something that I'm just going to feel this way about, because that's the simplest possible way you could run that monster. And then you'll at least be able to identify where that feeling is coming from. That would be my consideration. Ben Carter, you saw the Geek Philosophy. That was a great video. Geek Philosophy's video about running D&D for kids. Any thoughts on how to adapt the game? I actually want to do... I was trying to remember why this came up. Maybe it was after Geek Philosophy's video. Maybe it was something else. But I remember seeing... Oh, I remember. It's a piece of media that I was watching, which I'll probably do a video about at some point. Maybe not that episode, but it was a cartoon. And I was watching the cartoon, and I was like, jeepers, that was really dark for a kids show. And I was like, at some point, I would love to like sit down with like a psychologist, like a child psychologist, and be like, hey, where's the line? What's reasonable to put into kids' entertainment and not? So this is actually something I want to do a video about. May not be this year, but that is something that I've been thinking about as well. I have not ever run for kids before, although I'd love to. I just haven't had the opportunity. Who's your favorite character to have ever played or DM'd for? Favorite character. I really enjoyed playing a cleric in my Curse of Strahd game, because she was very untrustworthy and untrusting, and she was very she wasn't evil by any means, but she was very pragmatic, and that was a lot of fun. Your favorite characters, personally, Bo's a lot of fun. Thank you, Cosmic Kook. I am having a great day. I got to tell off somebody in the parking lot who parked diagonally on 2 spaces, like a total jerk. And I recognized, as someone was walking up, I was like, I bet that's the driver, because they were pulling out their keys, and as they got into their cars, as they rolled down the window, I was like, don't do that. And he was like, oh, okay. And his passenger started insulting me, calling me homophobic insults and stuff. But it seemed like the driver at least was like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I shouldn't have done that. So that was fun. That was nice. Have I watched any Dimension 20? Yes, I've watched the first season of Fantasy High. I've watched Escape from the Bloodkeep and some of Unsleeping City before I just ended up not being able to financially do the Dropout subscription. Dropout is going to be the next thing that once I'm in a little bit more secure financial position / once I've caught up on some more stuff, Dropout is going to be the thing I sign up for so that I can binge a lot of Dimension 20. I know a lot of it's on YouTube, but I want to support the channel as well and watch some of the other ancillary stuff, kind of, dip into that space a little bit more. Thank you, Cosmic Kook. That is nice to see me unedited as well. What is a cool class / subclass / race that we might refer to themselves as we / us? Kalishtar would, right? Because isn't Kalishtar's whole thing? I think they're from Eberron, that they have another individual inside of them. So they would think of themselves as plural. I guess arguably you could make the case that a warlock would. And then, of course, someone with a noble background would refer to themselves as we, of course. Have you ever had Gary asks, have I ever had a time when a character did a fluffernutter type scene, and how did I deal with the absolute insanity that some players can create? It wasn't a fluffernutter. I don't think I've ever had that, but I did once have a player find a crystal ball, or an orb that a wizard would cast with, and they were a wizard. And I was like, yeah, it's going to help you cast spells better. And he's like, oh, can I swallow it? I was like, sure. Make a constitution check, see if you can force it down. And then he forced this crystal ball in his stomach, and it was the end of a one shot. It was my my brother-in-law's brother, so my sister's husband's brother, and so it was the very end of a one shot. We were heading out. It was the last thing we were doing, in that game before the end of the holidays. And he just looked at me. He's like, "So do I get any magic for that?" And I just looked at him. I was like, no. And if it had been a campaign, that wouldn't have been my answer. But it was the last thing that happened in the one shot. I was just like, how do I? No, man, that's not how the magic works. But yeah, that was fun. I also did have I was trying to get my characters to do an auction for a magic item, but they were like, well, we're gonna try to intercept it before the auction. Okay, fair enough. I would have an auction would have been a lot of fun, but I want to reward my players' plans, and they ended up doing they had to I turned it into a shell game for the cart that was that was taking the magic item to the auction, and if you set your players loose in a city and say stop 3 carts, they're gonna do some magic in the middle of the city. So you just have the consequences happen as they would. But I've never had anything quite as extreme, I don't think, as a fluffernutter. Do I have issues with players over planning, coming up with 100 what if scenarios? No. It's useful for me to make sure that I've covered all my bases as a GM if I hear them making all these plans. But generally, I don't want to overgeneralize. Players over planning is not the problem. Or if it is, the issue isn't them over planning, it's them making a plan and then time passes between that and the next session and they don't really remember the plan, or at least why the plan makes sense or all the steps for it. The over planning itself isn't usually the problem I've had. Are your fans part of the Geek Squad? I don't know if we want to be quite that derivative. Have I tried Fate? I think I have. I'm trying to remember if I can't think of any system I've ever played of it, any game session rather I've ever played of it. I'm not wild about Fate. I don't know quite why. I should play it and sort of see how I actually feel with it in practice. I just don't know. It's never grabbed me, but I also can't think of a full session I've ever played of it. But just seeing it in play or reading about it, it's never gripped me. But I think Fate is also the Avatar role-playing game, so I'm definitely going to play it soon. Hopefully soon. So I don't have any strong feelings about Fate. It's never hooked me in with its mechanics, is the best way I can phrase it. What's my favorite older edition D&D module / adventure? I confess that I haven't read very many, from older editions especially. So I have some that I really, really want to read from older editions. That is unfortunately my best. Oh, no, that's not true. It is, but there was a brief time when I was working on my previous one of my pandemic games, and I was reading some old Dragon magazines, which is something I really want to do at some point, is, read through all those adventures as well. And I lifted one directly. I had to change a lot of stuff for, sake of editions. But it was going into the forest and saving a unicorn that had been injured by a goblin's arrow. That was really fun. I really enjoyed that one. Have I ever tried Foundry VTT or another VTT? Yeah, I want to try Roll20 again because I haven't used Roll20 in a while, and I've never used Roll20 for a published module that I've purchased through Roll20. I've only done it where I'm having to create all the content on my own, and it's a huge. It is a huge hassle for the way that I run games. I don't want to say that it's not valuable. It is very valuable. to have the sort of resource, but I'm not someone who really likes like putting down all the houses and finding all the maps and all that stuff. So I'm probably going to run Curse of Strahd soon through Roll20. I think that will be a huge help if like I can do something I wasn't able to do before, which is buy the whole campaign through the map, like through the app. And I've used Above VTT. I want to try Owlbear. I've not tried Foundry. I've not tried any of those yet, other than I think Roll20 and Above VTT. Yeah, Cosmic Kook said the same thing about Kalashtar. I'm way behind. Kaya is enjoying PF2E. Hi, Mr. Megwell. Someone earlier said, oh shoot, I lost it. Psycho, there it is. Psycho the 13th said, howdy, Mike Mercer. Very flattering. Thank you so much. Put goals in a pinned comment on the Patreon. Yeah, once it goes away, that's a really good solution. I'll probably also make a video about it and just like talk them up in videos as well. Am I still searching for regular employment? And if so, any decent leads? I am still searching, but I'm pretty much like, I know that we are in a recession and that my role, it tend to be an office manager, an executive assistant, things like that. Really hard to find. I've had some interviews recently. I had one that I really liked. I thought the interview went really well. And then I followed up, and I didn't hear anything back. So, fair enough. There's nothing I can do beyond that. And honestly, like I want to try to get more to the point of being able to spend more time on this full time and be able to like, I want to run paid games through like start playing .games. So just being able to, let go of the constant need to try to get a full-time job, which is tough, because like that would be really nice. But I just think unfortunately with the economy being the way it is right now, it's just not going to happen. Thank you so much, McKang, for asking. I really appreciate that. Care to share what that actual play was that I was in? Yeah, of course. It was called Friday Night Quests. The podcast I don't think is still up anymore, but it's all on YouTube. I was running the second campaign when the pandemic hit. I have a lot of complex feelings. I think that I have improved as a GM since running those, whatever it was, 20 issues, but I think that 20 episodes. I think the main problem with the second campaign was I just wasn't, it was a very different pacing, and I just don't think we'd found the pacing we were happy with by the time the pandemic hit. But that first campaign I'm really proud of. There's, I don't stand by every joke I made on that show. There were very few that I think were harmful. There's a couple that I was like, oh, that's not a good joke. But it was a very silly show. Beyond that, I think check it out. It's called Friday Night Quests. Playlist is out there somewhere. Master Joker. I'm so glad. I'm so happy that I was able to help you fall in love with D&D again. Oops. Oh, suddenly I jumped way down. Okay, there we go. Book club for inspired reading. Yeah. Christian, if your D&D group wants to do that, go for it. My concern with that is that a lot of those books probably do need trigger warnings or content warnings. I read the original Conan stories, like the first collected volume of them, and there's some weird racial stuff in there, and just like if you go into it knowing that you're gonna hit things that you're not gonna agree with, but you're still gonna be able to find things and like lift content out of them, it helps. Do you have any thoughts about actual play shows, especially pre-recorded shows, including content warnings? I think they should. I know why some of them don't. Because I think the elephant in the room being Critical Role, although I'm not holding their feet to the fire specifically, I'm sure there are others as well. I'm sure that they're more worried about people complaining about spoilers. I think it's worth putting content warnings in the description at the very least, so if somebody knows that there is stuff, like, for example, we know for a fact that Critical Role has no problem based on stuff we've talked about in Campaign 1, events that have happened throughout all three, probably not all three, but throughout the campaigns, they have no problem depicting the death of minors, and I don't mean people who go into mines with pickaxes, the death of people who are under the legal voting age on their show. That's okay, it's their game, they can do whatever they want. There are people who need to know that. So I think people should, especially if you're pre-recording, Which also, everyone should just pre-record their actual plays. I know there's a value to going live, but so often just like pre-record it. You're not interfacing with the chat anyway. I hope this will not make me seem like a hypocrite if I ever do a live actual play, but like if you're doing a sustained actual play show, I think it makes more logistical sense to pre-record it. And if you're pre-recording it, just include the content warnings. It's just worth it. Unfortunately, they're dealing with the fact that they have an audience that came up around a live show, and they have different expectations. So I think they just don't want to, ruffle any feathers with that part of the audience, because that audience gets very persnickety with them. But I just don't find that to be a terribly convincing excuse, and anyone starting a new show would have no excuse. So include content warnings. Is my feelings. Adventure Zone Demystified, that is the sort of thing that I would probably, once we hit 1,500 patrons, I'd probably have a poll. It would probably be something like, and it would be like mini-series. So it'd be like, okay, do you want me to do, the first season of Actions Incorporated, or the first season of Fantasy High, or do you want me to do, X number of episodes of the Adventure Zone Balance, or the Adventure Zone Amnesty? Maybe I'd pick another one as well. But it would be something like that. There would be a poll, for sure. Getting ready for a Witchlight campaign with a first-time DM who's also your best friend. I DM for him, and I know he can be scattered and forget. How can I best help him without hurting his feelings? Offer. I guess I would just say offer and say, I know DMing is a lot. This is your first time doing it. Let me know if I can be of any help. I'm happy to keep track of initiative, for example. Because initiative is one where there's not, like... I know I it was a spicy hot take in Monday's video for me to say that initiative order doesn't matter, which it doesn't. But that's not 100% true. But I'm gonna say another semi-spicy hot take. There's only so much value in the players not knowing the initiative, so feel free to let the players keep track of it. I feel like is a helpful way to take some work off of the Dungeon Master. But something like that, feel free to say, hey, if there's anything in here that's stressing you out, or anything in here that you don't feel like you necessarily will be able to find it fast enough. Like, do you want me to be, like, if you want to, like, look at me and say, can you look up this rule? I'm happy to do that, so you don't have to waste your time doing it. If you don't care about that rule, you just want to make a ruling on the moment, and you want me to remind you later, let me know, but I'm here as your resource. Something like that, I think, would be hopefully helpful. I feel like Black Flag might have a really good shot, since people really like 5e, but they don't like WotC as much anymore. Yeah, it depends on what their approach is to fixing the issues they have with 5e, but yes, I think there's a very real chance that Black Flag will do really well. How do I balance the GM and player focus for my videos? It's I don't know. I don't really worry too much about it, but I think about it. Let me phrase it. I think about it a lot. I don't have a solution that is anything other than just feeling it out and being like, I definitely need to do some of each every month. But I don't sweat it too much, because my hope is that people see the Dungeon Master videos, and if they're a player, they think, oh, that sounds fun. Maybe I should try some dungeon mastering. So I don't sweat it too terribly much because of that. That being said, I do have a video coming up about metagaming where I know for a fact that throughout the video I just switch in between addressing dungeon masters and addressing players completely arbitrarily. There's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes that's just the nature of big topics like that. So, Kaya, thank you so much for asking that. You're prepping a Red Hand of Doom campaign. Do I have any tips or any experience with it? I really want to read Red Hand of Doom. I sort of played Red Hand of Doom once, and by that I mean that was my second campaign ever, but maybe 2 sessions in, I got cast in the university's theater play that they were running, like the fall play, and I came back to my dorm at the end of every time they were having a session. I'd walk in for like the last 10 minutes, and someone would be like, oh, you killed a dragon. I was like, oh, cool. Thanks. That's exciting, because they were still running my character without me. But I like what I've read of Red Hand of Doom. I really want to run it at some point. But I have not run it myself. But I've technically sort of played in it, but I have not. Any opinions on the Fighting Fantasy book series? I don't know what the Fighting Fantasy book series is, so I will have to. You say you rediscovered them after 2 decades. Curious if they'd be a way to introduce friends to fantasy RPGs. They might be. I am going to write that down as something I need to look into. Fighting Fantasy book series. I'll check them out. I'll add them to my Goodreads list. Is very, very intense, but I will definitely add these to those. Thank you so much for sending that through. And that was from Tiny Demon, if anyone else knows of those and wants to weigh in. Do I run games for patrons? I have a $100 tier where like I will run a dedicated game, and I have one person who we're gearing up for that. But I am going to give them first crack at my start playing account, and I'll tell them, like, I'll deduct the cost of your Patreon for the month from the first game every month. So I definitely will run. I'll definitely include that for them as well. Appreciate the combat stress advice. Oh, Galen. Try static damage. It's been simple critters so far, just tiptoeing into the first spellcasting enemies. Yeah, Galen, if you are dealing with spellcasting enemies, take a look at the most recent stuff that Wizards has put out with spellcasters. I don't know off the top of my head what that is, but they're trying to make a very deliberate effort not to have you looking up spells on your end. So hopefully that does help. KMG says, hello, all of you sexy bear sniffers. I don't think that's our official name for the Super Geek fans, but I do like it as the background one. Uncouth has a 3-part question. I'm going to take a moment to read this. Do you have any kind of routine to get into character before playing, or any tips to find a little way to make a character stand out? Struggling with how to get in the mindset for a character before going into playing a campaign that's going to be run in Dutch. While that is your native language, you're used to playing in English and struggling with getting immersed and expressing yourself properly in character. It depends on the character, but I did used to have... I like physical props or things that like remind me of them. So when I played the cleric in my Curse of Strahd game, I got a necklace off of Etsy, which I'll actually... Screw it. I'll just promote this Etsy account right now. Why not? Bear with me while I look them up. But I would just wear it, and I got one for the player who was playing my character's sister as well. Just to be like, this is like a cool thing to link us as our characters. And that's the kind of thing that I do. Like I'll write things out in a, oh no, their Etsy account isn't open anymore. Oh well. Shoot, that's a bummer. But something like that, or even, without spending money on things, like what I'll do is I'll write out my spells in a book, or I'll make sure I have certain dice that represent that character. If maybe I think when I played a character who was non-binary, I made sure that all of my dice sort of represented the colors of the non-binary flag, or, I'll use certain dice that kind of remind me of the aesthetic of a character, or I'll get a dice bag that'll like represent that character in some way. Those are the kinds of things that I do. If you're playing digitally, that's a little bit tougher. So I tend to say voices, and I know not everyone can do voices or accents, but that is a way that I find helps me with that. If that is helpful information, I hope it is. I know Dropout. I am so interested in Dropout. Oh, Uncouth, no worries at all in splitting up your question over multiple comments. I totally get it. I didn't realize there was a character limit. That's good to know. So that's thank you, Kid Flash Cone. Sorry, I keep hitting this. I'm celebrating 25,000 when I've actually hit 30,000 subscribers, which shows you how, eventful this month has been so far, or this year has been so far, with all of the OGL stuff and all of that's been going on, and all of the, everything. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. Never played D&D. I appeared on your feed last Friday. You're up to date with the Vox Machina Demystified, and watched some others as well, and you're looking for a play group. Rob, I am so excited to hear that. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to hear that. It was nice to see me be referenced in that Matt Colville video. What? Ivo, what do you mean by this? I know that Matt Colville referenced me on his Twitter. Or was recommended me in his Twitter, on his Twitter replies. Have I made an appearance in a Matt Colville video, or I don't know what you mean by that, but I know that I reference him in a lot of videos, and he did comment on my recent video. I think that may be what you're referring to. He commented on my what was it called? My real-time D&D video one, which was really awesome. Or how is Oreo doing? Oreo is great, and Oreo, despite what my wife and her mother believe, is not a bully towards my other dogs. She's just a little aggressive. She just wants to play with them all the time, and she'll bite them playfully. It is. I'm doing a bit of a bit, but she is a very playful biter. And they just aged 5 years the day that she walked in, so they're getting used to it. Tyler, 25,000. There's only 93 of you here. Well, this didn't have any announcement really, and I think also taking into account the fact that this is not when I normally post things. That's why I wanted to go live at 10 a.m. But that ended up being possible, unfortunately. But because of the validation or verification I needed to go through. But yes, next one will actually be like properly scheduled in advance. In fact, I already know when the next one's going to be. It's going to be in early April. So that is that's the verdict there. It's going to be a slightly lower attendance today, and I'm totally fine with that. Hey! Someone named Victoria Fonseca 1 said, "Oh my god, you're so cool and I love your channel. I wish I could be your wife." Oh, Victoria Fonseca, I used to know someone with that name, and then she changed her name to my name for some weird reason. Hi, sweetie. It's good to see you. I don't know if she's still in the chat. That's really funny. All the games you know are older ones. Let's see. You got the video with the nude photo shoot. Yes, indeed. I have another one of those coming out at some point this year. Thank you so much. Happy to see you in Brazil. Favorite example of using music to enhance the vibes of the session. Mine is turning off the music because the radio stopped working in a post-apocalyptic game. Before I used music in my games, my favorite version of this that happened was when I was, it was a Christmas, it was like our last game before a Christmas holiday. And so we like turned on the fire on the TV, like put on YouTube and had the fireplace going. And we got to like a dramatic beat towards the end of the story when they're like, "Oh, we're looking for this like magic key. Have you seen it?" And the NPC is like, "Yeah, I know I am what you're talking about." They're like, "What?" And she said, "I'm the key." Like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I'm the door." And there's this dramatic moment where they realized like what they're looking for wasn't like, a magic item. It was a curse on an individual. And at that exact moment, the fireplace video ended. Because it was only like a 3-hour video. And I was like, nope. I know we have 30 more minutes until we're supposed to finish playing, but we cannot. I'm sorry. We cannot stop playing when the fireplace just cut to credits. So that is my favorite example of that happening. That was really cool. Ever played Cyberpunk Red? I have not. Avatar is powered by... Oh, Avatar's powered by the apocalypse? I didn't know that. Okay. If I could collaborate with one other TTRPG YouTuber, who should we start tweeting at? Don't bug people on Twitter on my behalf. I really appreciate it. Don't. I've reached out to a lot of other TTRPG YouTubers, and I have stuff in progress with a few of them. It just takes time and energy. Please don't bother people on my behalf. I really appreciate it though. But collaborations take a lot more time than usual videos do, by orders of magnitude more. So even the people I have already started talking to about collaborations, those projects are in various stages of development. Point people towards me if you want me to reach out to them and make a collaboration, and then I'll reach out to them and see if their stuff makes sense. If you have an idea for one, ping me with it. You can send me a tweet, but also just like message me on Discord is easier. But don't bother people on my behalf. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. From France, from a nearly forever DM who likes my takes on DMing, even though you haven't DM'd D&D since 3.5. Thank you so much, Damien. I appreciate it. Hi, Ellen. Ellen said, "Hi, Mike." Oh, Will. Oh, Will. I remember your name from the Friday Night Quest days. It is still on the Apple app. Okay. I don't know how much of that is current, because I know that Apple charges you money if you have more than $100 up. Oh, My Squeezing Arm, thank you so much. $5 says, "Too broke for Patreon, but love the content and can donate. Please check out Into the Weird and Wild by Wet Ink Games." Pardon me. Has wilderness dungeon rules. Oh, that's cool. I will definitely make a note of that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, My Squeezing Arm. I'll probably watch this back, but I'm just gonna... This is what I do. This is You guys get to see you folks get to see the secret to my success is I email myself stuff. And that is how I do things. Into the Weird and Wild. I'll check that out next. I'm almost done reading the Shadow Dark RPG. I'll check that out right after. You were wanting to get into Dimension 20. Do I have a recommendation? How? Start with, you can jump in anyone. I've heard amazing things about Unsleeping City, which is the New York-based campaign, and I love a good, like, secret magic in the city campaign. But Fantasy High is also terrific, so I would check that one out. For actual plays recorded live, do you think they should include content warnings based on the DM's plans or something like that, or just wait until they post the VOD? Yeah, I don't think there's a value to posting based on the DM's plans. I do think, here's actually something I would love to see more of, is basically a consent form that accurately reflects the combined consent form results of the players. So something that says, like, hey, these are the topics that we're not going to cover. These are the topics that are open season. So that way anyone coming in can just pull up that PDF and know what's going to happen, what is on the table for the game. I think there's a value to that. It also tells people that even though maybe the Session Zero wasn't streamed, because Session Zeros probably don't need to be streamed because they are such a personal part of the process. I understand the appeal of both sides of that argument, but, I don't think you need to stream a Session Zero. But being able to reflect, like, yes, we did a Session Zero, we have safety tools in place, and here's our checklist. If there's nothing on there that's super personal, which is obviously the big asterisk on that, because no one should divulge too much of themselves in that. But that's something I would love to see for something like Critical Role, where it's like, hey, listen, we know there are certain topics they're not going to cover, and we know there are certain topics they are. It'd be nice to see that. That's my feelings on that. If you're going to do a live stream. But I also know that is not a one-size-fits-all solution. But I want to see... You're circling around the issue. We need to see... Need is maybe the wrong word. There should be... I think there should be some sort of accommodation made for people who have triggers, and that there's content that they need to be aware of. That's my... even if it's something like the GM saying in the session, like, hey, just FYI to the audience, we're about to, like, tread into some territory. Something like that. That's my feeling on that. The games the D&D game of the start of E.T. demystified. Yeah, maybe don't the demystified lesson. I can do that for you right now. Don't call your fellow players penis breath. I know that I don't think he was a player in that game. In fact, that was the whole point of that scene. It's really funny. Poxporn, thank you so much. Do I have a dream team of D&D creators I would like to live play with? No, just because D&D live play isn't on my radar right now, just because I have other things I want to do. If I were to sit down and make one, I could make a heck of a list, but I would just be happy to do it with anyone, just because it's not something I'm actively seeking out right now. I don't have a list in that regard. Oh, awesome. Damien, you said that I gave you the inspiration to start considering going back to a D&D 5e for an experimental isekai style exploration discovery short campaign with suppression of the in-out of character knowledge. Yeah, this is going to be the subject of a future video at some point, but my Curse of Strahd game is an isekai story, and I did just sit the players down and be like, listen, I know you all know things about monsters like vampires and werewolves. Whatever you know from the real world, like movies and TV and books, is what your characters know. Let's not worry too much about that. Just the things that you know from games doesn't apply. But that was easier for those kinds of monsters because they're so based on folklore. But there's a weird sort of freedom that isekai gives you where it's like, yeah, what you know makes sense. Like, you know about Medusas. You know something about basilisks because you've read books and seen movies and stuff. Like, there's others you don't know about. So just play by those rules. And honestly, I wish I'd put that in the metagaming video, but it solves a lot of those problems. The dude JB says this may be an odd question. Do I find it interesting that my most viewed video is about an 8-year-old controversy? Do I still think it would be as popular if the cast was more open about it? I don't think it would be more popular if they talked about it more, because I wouldn't have had to make the video. And I unfortunately that's the sad truth of it, is because there's so much like loaded about that topic. I didn't know I was making a drama video. I'm not denying that it is one. I just didn't know I was making one. in hindsight, I am not at all surprised. I'll talk about that a lot more in my next Demystified video, obviously. And I'm actually going to do a live stream later in April where we're going to talk a little bit more about that subject, probably, because this will be based on my next upcoming Demystified video. Flute Salute, hello! Flute Salute said, congratulations on 25,000 subscribers. Community's D&D episodes Demystified, please. Listen, those episodes are great, and I would be happy to do some Demystified for those when we unlock that other feature. Flute Salute, thank you so much for the $5. I really appreciate it. Got some tips for adding flair to a campaign, but on a tight budget. Yes, music. You can get a lot of music for free through legal means. People like Kevin MacLeod. Kevin MacLeod has an absolutely unbelievable library of completely free music for you to use in your games, or tabletop audio. Put them on your phone and play them through a Bluetooth speaker, or use Kenku FM if you're doing Discord. Kenku FM, which I just got working yesterday. I just finally sat down and figured out how to make it work with the Discord bot. It's very easy, actually. So my next online game is going to include battle music again for the first time in... Gee, what happened in March of 2020? Why did I suddenly stop using music in my games? So that's a really easy way to do it on no budget at all. Also, light a candle if you are playing in person. It's something I would love to do. Don't put it next to the character sheets, but having a candle in the background, very easy one. You're DMing for 9 players in a Dragonlance game. Any tips for a large party? No, because I'm the guy who thinks that Critical Role should have split their game into 2 groups, so I am not the person to ask about a large party. Just make sure people understand that time is a factor, and you can't really do the long sequences that you could in a normal session if they come from other D&D sessions. That would be my my recommendation on that. And static monster damage, damage, static initiative. Oh, this is a good one. And this is something that I just recently remembered that my DM used to do. Ask for a roll of initiative at the top of the session, so that way when the first initiative happens in the game, you don't have to call for initiative. You can just start right away. That is a great one. And honestly, you could just use that initiative for the entire session if you wanted to. Or do what they do in Shadowdark and have whoever rolls highest on initiative starts, and then you just go clockwise from there. Sam Antic Design says, congratulations on the milestone. We'll watch the rest of replay. Wanted to let me know how much you appreciate the videos. Relatively recent subscriber. Thank you so much, Sam Antic Designs. I'm assuming Sam is your name, but in case the entire thing is your name, Sam Antic Designs, thank you so much. I'm having trouble talking today. Rachel says, congratulations. Watch the content as someone who's never played D&D in order to make it feel better. Have you heard any of the new Worlds Beyond Number? I'm behind on it. I've listened to episode 1 and the first 3 episodes of the Children's Crusade. I haven't listened to episode 2 of the main feed, and I still have 5 episodes of the Patreon campaign left to finish, so I'm a little bit behind on it. But I really enjoyed what I'd heard so far. Illuminated Stone Person, I am very grateful that there is no pink post-it needed for this chat. You folks are all being so wonderful. It's really awesome. The Indecisiveness said, congratulations. Thank you so much. Theater Nerd Alert. Yes, indeed. Hi, Leading Blind. Oops. Where did it go? Oh, boy. I'm in for a treat. There's probably something I said that I was about to read or watch. Would recommend unlisting the live stream rather than leaving it up on the channel. Oh, yeah, that's good to know. Hopefully it won't affect my analytics too terribly much, but yeah. Well, thank you for the yeah, I don't think I'm going to unlist it fully, unless it does start to affect my analytics. I try not to worry about those too much anyway, but I appreciate that. Stephanie Boss, would like to hear more about my non-binary character. Sadly, not a lot to say. It was for a one-shot, but it was for a modern-day one-shot, and the character was a warlock, and so I rationalized that by saying that they practiced Wicca, and I had to do a bunch of... I didn't have to. I chose to do a bunch of Googling to understand more about that mindset in order to better represent that like approach to life, which is something I just don't fundamentally understand. I also spoke with an Australian accent because, like I said earlier, doing a voice just helps me get into character. And of course, because they were my Christensen character, that character did not make it out of the session. My characters tend to die more than anyone else's. No one else in the session died, but mine did. And that was purely because I made just a dumb mistake. Like, I walked into the portal. It's like, oh, oops, I guess the character's dead. Damn. No, that was it. It was just for a modern day one-shot, so there's not a lot to report beyond that. Any tips on getting your fellow PCs to help in role-playing more in the game that you're playing? Christopher? I don't know. That's a good question. Speculating on it, I would have to say that just turning to them and prompting them is a really helpful way. Because this is what, as a dungeon master, I do. I don't know necessarily... we have to adapt this a bit for a player, but my experience as a dungeon master is to, like, turn to someone and say, how does your character feel about this? It's a little bit more difficult to do that as the player because it's a little bit more reasonable from the dungeon master to do that. To be able to, like, just sort of put the onus on people, there's more authority behind them, so they're able to get away with that a little bit more is the best way I can put that. As a player, I would say, like, say things like, do you want to come with me on this, side quest? Do you want to, pardon me, do you have any feelings on this? I think is a good way to start. Also just, maybe sit down with them and ask, like, hey, I'd love to roleplay with your character. This is actually something I've heard recommended recently, where someone said, like, hey, I'd love to, roleplay a scene with you in advance. Would you be interested in doing that at the table? Because some people just don't like being put on the spot. Maybe if you say, like, I'd love to do a scene with you in the next session where, like, my character asks you about X, would you be open to that? Would you be open to my character asking you about our backstory next time we have a watch together? You don't have to have, like, a long, detailed answer, but it would just be fun to have an interaction between our characters. That was a recommendation for DMs to sort of ask players in advance, but I think you as a player could absolutely do that. I think it would hopefully help get them out of their shell. What kind of topics do you want to look at for the world-breaking series? You've loved it so far, but seem to have addressed the biggest topics. I have a whole list. I'm going to do... feats is going to be on that list. The gods are going to be on that list, like banning gods. Like, basically, look at the player's handbook titles. Multiclassing. I don't have any strong feelings about multiclassing, but I'll have to make some. I'll have to figure out how I feel about it before I make that video. Backgrounds. An ever-present question now because people are apparently... There's a whole discourse brewing about how backgrounds are bad design because no one uses them. I don't know. There's a lot of strong feelings around 5e right now, in part informed by the OGL kerfuffle and just a general reevaluation of 5e. We're heading toward 10 years of it, so it's very natural that we're getting reevaluation. The power creep doesn't really help it as backgrounds are getting feats added to them and things like that. So that is a spicier topic than I think I'll end up than it would have been otherwise. And spells. Spells is another one as well. There's probably others I'm forgetting, but those are some of the topics from the World Breaking series coming up. Probably the next one is going to be backgrounds, my guess. I don't remember. I need to look at the list. Any advice for forever GMs who finally get to play how to be a good player and support your new GM? If you haven't checked it out already, I made a video about being a lawful good player. That is a great starting point. And next Thursday's video, we'll probably have some more on that as well. They have troubles with non-binary pronouns on Critical Role. It's slightly annoying every time. Yeah. Unfortunately, they are in their 30s and 40s. And speaking as someone who's in his 30s, it sometimes takes more practice and familiarity, especially if it's not someone who's actually in our lives on a day-to-day basis. That's not a good excuse. It doesn't surprise me that, they are not interacting with as many non-binary people outside of online spaces, so they're not practicing that as much as they otherwise would. The other part of the problem is that all these characters are completely imaginary. Like, they can't actually look at this person and remember details. Like, these are the same people who, like, no shade on any cast members, but Marisha did think Kima was a dwarf for most of campaign 1. So sometimes that is just a huge caveat with that discussion in D&D, is like, it's sometimes just really hard to remember details. It's not, again, a great excuse. It's obviously still frustrating. and I don't have a can't make it not frustrating, unfortunately. I myself am often struggling with like remembering to use non-gendered language. You probably caught me doing a little bit of that in this session. If you were attentively listening, I've had to very consciously not gender my deliberately non-binary character. It sucks that it takes us that much practice. I apologize on my behalf, and I'm sure they would as well. It is very ingrained in us, and that is a whole other problem, unfortunately. Thanks, Mike. It's been difficult and helpful. For more context, it can be an IRL game where you're playing a Mark of Storm half-elf Eldritch Knight. I have not played the Eldritch Knight before. I almost did. I rolled up a character for the Eldritch Knight, but the game never ended up happening. But I hope you have a lot of fun as that character. Running game for your friends. One character has written extra fan fiction for their character and their party. What are your thoughts on headcanon versus canon? I think if it doesn't impact the story in any meaningful way, if they're writing something about their characters, feel free to ask, like, and they may not mean it to be canon. If they're calling it fan fiction, ask, like, are you hoping that this is canon, or are you just writing something that you think would be cute if it had happened? Or maybe cute is the wrong word. That you think would be fun if it had happened, but you're not intending for this to be canon. Because there are people who write fan fiction who have no delusions that it's ever going to happen in a game. Ask them, say, like, are you interested in this being canon? If so, I may, like, need to adjust a little bit on my campaign, or ask you to shave off a couple details. Otherwise, it's not that different than if they had role played through a scene. But it's also up to the other players. If you say, like, oh, is this something that the other players would feel comfortable with a player basically saying, here's what all of our characters did? That's something I would have a lot of questions about. Like, from my videos, I'm willing to try anything, but I would be very conscious if I did that in my game to, like, watch the reactions of the other players and see if they felt like agency was being taken away from them by having their descriptions, like, of what they did decided by another player. As if, for example, way back in the internet days, I used to do, like, play-by-post, like describing, like, writing a story. I guess it was role-playing, but there were no rules, no dice rolls or anything like that, in, like, the Matrix subreddits. And there were some people who were, like, really, really bad about deciding on what your character did on, like, for you. And it always rubbed me the wrong way. So that was something that would be my one thing to be conscious of. Otherwise, if it doesn't conflict with anything, if it's, like, basically a downtime, like, side thing, there's no harm in that. My wife has come into the chat to say that Oreo is a bully. Listen, she's just passionate. Listen. Benito, she's the one who messaged right before you did, so you're the one telling her that someone's moving in on me, and trust me, no one has a candle against her. I'm the lucky one in that scenario. Patrick, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful. This entire year has been so wonderful. I love the colorful shirts I wear. What's today is very fitting based on what I was just describing. This is my just married shirt. Hopefully that's in frame. Even though I got married in 2021, it's just the most comfortable shirt I own. I mean, it's so cozy. So, yeah, that's the shirt I'm wearing today. Collabs incoming. I've got some really exciting collaborations coming, Stephanie. I'm very excited for people to see those. What do you see the difference between playing D&D with a group of friends and playing D&D for an actual play podcast? Boy, the differences are so vast, but the simplest explanation is, this is, I speak from having gotten this a little bit wrong in the campaign I was running. You have to be very, very careful with how you're spending your time to make sure that things are happening in every session. As for example, I think that the fact that if you listen to the early Adventure Zone, is especially Balance, and I think Amnesty was pretty good about this as well. Something happens in every session and moves the story forward in some way, or at least excites or delights the audience in some way. They're really, really good about that. Critical Role, not their main concern, which is how you get things like, listen, I love the show, But elephant in the room from episode 72 of the Vox Machina campaign, there's like 2 plot relevant things that happens in that 4-hour episode, because it's not their main concern. But if you're doing another actual play show, especially it depends on the format, particularly with podcasts, if it's like an hour long, you really need to make the most of your time. If it's just like, turn on the mics, we're just going to document this, then like, that's fine. But that would be, that's where a lot of the questions come up, and everything sort of comes off of that. You want to make sure that you're not wasting the audience's time. So everything ties into that in some way. Galen sneaking in with another question. Best Nat 1 in the game, either as a DM or player. You know, I don't tend to like keep track or remember my Nat 1s that much, other than to say, boy, the first time I was in 5th edition, I rolled Nat 1 on my initiative. Not my first session, but the first time I did it in 5th edition was a real like wake-up call. I don't think I'd ever had a character get a negative on initiative before, and I had a -1 dexterity. So I got like a 0. Maybe I had a -2. I think I had a -1 initiative score, which was very, just whenever that happens, like, all right, see y'all tomorrow. Which video did Colville comment on? Colville commented on, what is it called? The rule that, I don't remember the names of my videos. Hold on. What is it called? How a forgotten D&D rule shapes the entire old school gaming culture. He said it was a good video. Well, actually, in his tweet, he said it was a good video. In the comments, he just said he liked my MCDM shirt, which I'll count. You picked it up in the trans rights bundle on itch. I might already have it. Oh, I don't know which... I'm assuming that was in reference to Into the Weird and Wild. I'll have to look at that. I'll have to look at that bundle then. There's a lot of games in that bundle, so I'll have to look in there. Thank you, my squeezing armor. I appreciate that. Crown of Candy. Oh, I've heard great things about Crown of Candy on Dimension 20. Do I play any of the World of Darkness TTRPGs? I do not. I don't really know what those are. I've heard the name recently, but I do not know what they are. Beyond that, apologies. Leo, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was a very sweet message. Oh, thank you so much, Captain Cooltime. I really appreciate that as well. A lot of really nice questions here. Last question from my squeezing arm. Any interest in hex crawls and or OSR? Yeah, I've been looking at hex crawls very carefully because I'm probably going to do a West Marches game soon. And if I do that, especially if I do it in 5e, I've been looking a lot at that system. And honestly, even if I don't run a hex crawl, I would probably still... I think the hex crawl rules have sort of unlocked something I've been brewing on for how I want to handle random encounters. More on that coming in a video at some point this year. And the OSR, I've been sort of interested a little bit since the video I just mentioned, actually, which was how a forgotten rule shaped the old school culture. And sort of like interested, dipping my toe, want to make sure that like I'm finding the right thing that actually speaks to me. Man, Shadow Dark, it's on Kickstarter right now. It's almost at $1 million for like a $10,000 goal. I'm reading the entire document. Kelsey from the Arcane Library sent it over. It's so good. It's a very, very indie game. You know, it's just, she wrote all the text, her wife did all the marketing, and she's, you know, bought the art, and those are the only other collaborators. It's really, really good. If you're at all interested in like lower magic, or not even lower magic, yes, lower magic, but like more sword and sorcery game, man, I'm really enjoying what I'm reading. Victor, thank you so much. A very lovely message as well. My opinion on running, oops, oh, it jumped down. Oh, that was annoying. Okay, here we go. Longbow 397 asked, what is my opinion on running non-fantasy settings in D&D versus using systems that are designed specifically for that type of setting? You know, this is something I'm going to be thinking about a lot going into the campaign settings series. I don't have an answer yet. It's something that I'm watching for. I think D&D accomplishes very specific things, and it's not right for everything, but it can do everything, just not perfectly. So it really depends on what you're trying to do with the system. For example, I think Isekai works great if you're doing a story where the characters are going to like gain power and become epic heroes by the end of it. If you're not, D&D 5e might not be the right system for that. And it depends on a lot of the setting. Like someone, I don't remember who it was, I wish I could, but someone in my Discord commented that if I was going to do a video about Theros, which I definitely will at some point in my campaign setting series, they pointed out that something like Fantasy Age might be a better game for that setting. And I kind of agree for a lot of reasons we'll talk about when we get there. So, something I am thinking about. I don't have a full answer yet. Ben Carter, questions about breaking up bigger dungeons. Players about to reach the end of Lost Mine of Phandelver and never run a dungeon that size. That's a great thing. What I'm gonna do, Ben, is I'm gonna copy paste this. Unfortunately, the video probably I haven't written the video yet, so definitely I have no plans on when I'm gonna make this. But I do want to make a video about running dungeons. So Ben Carter, your question will be addressed in that video whenever I get to it. So pardon me, I'm just gonna email it to myself. Question about running dungeons for video about running dungeons. If y'all saw my email address or my email inbox, it would be very chaotic. There's a lot of stuff in there. What is Isekai? Isekai is any story where characters go into a magical world. So Chronicles of Narnia, where you go from the mundane world to a magical world. So Chronicles of Narnia, Kid in King Arthur's Court are all Western versions of that. The term is Japanese, I believe. So things like, help me, Spirited Away, I believe is Isekai. There's others in that genre as well in Japan, but we have a lot of stuff of it in Western as well. So that's the term. John Rambo is a ranger. I believe it. A ranger with a staff of magic missile. Yes. Boy, there's a whole conversation happening in the comments. This is why I love this community, because you folks can just have a really nice, lovely conversation in the comments, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to sweat it. Sword Coast Soundscapes. Oh, that's a recommendation for the people who are looking for audio as well. How was Oreo? Oreo was good. Oreo was good and not a bully, Victoria. My wife, who's definitely still watching this, maybe. Oreo's good. She's really getting used to the house and her brothers and somebody answered the Isekai story. Or is it the Isekai question? Probably half an hour ago. 2 people did. But yeah, Oreo's good. You took a unusual approach to Critical Role. Started with the first season of Legend of Vox Machina, then jumped on the playlist from there, in the process spoiling all of season 2. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's a lot of people I know who've done that in the online space. It is what it is. Oh, cool. The trans rights bundle is still going. You all know that because you've been in the chat for a lot longer than I have. Do I ever try play-by-post games? Not these days. Not for any reason other than I don't tend to be that regular at checking Discord or things like that anymore. If I was more dedicated to sitting down at my computer for them, I would do it. I just have not. Any tips on how to run a session 0? I need to make a video about that at some point. I have not, but yeah, it's a good question. Any suggestions for dealing with GM burnout in a longer campaign? My solution to it is to build in breaks for yourself that are not just for holidays, because holidays can also be overwhelming in their way. I skipped a question. I'm sorry. I'll come back to that in a moment. But finishing this answer, dealing with GM burnout, for me, actually listening to Worlds Beyond Number gave me a lot more, renewed a lot of my spoons in GMing. And that was really, really helpful for me. And it sort of made me realize that being able to listen to D&D podcasts while going out and about is something that helps me refill the well in a major way. That may not be what it is for everyone, but if you can find something that gives you inspiration for running games, being able to revisit it helps a lot. The question I skipped was from Captain Cooltime. My players got caught in a war battle. Any tips on how to not make it lame and not overwhelming for me, the GM? 2. 1 is if you're interested in a whole book and supplements about it, which you may not be for this specific context. But there is a book, Kingdoms of Warfare by Matt Colville, who I've not read this book yet, but apparently it handles this really well. But if you just want something simple, have them be able to focus on an individual enemy or like an individual, basically just structure an encounter, and the battle around it is the terrain. So they're in the fight, in the middle of the battle with things, and everything else in the fight is happening. Either you decided on it, or you have just like random rolls for who's gaining ground, who's losing ground, who's suffered the most casualties, and then you just focus on like the giant they're fighting or whatever it is, something like that. Especially if it can help kind of like, a giant is a great one because if they can like climb it, then they're removing themselves from the battle and they don't have to like worry about that happening around them. But it could be anything. Just to have an objective for them. Or like if you look at Helm's Deep from Two Towers, when there's like, hey, listen, this is not necessarily the best way for us to display how you do all your cool stuff. So we're going to send Aragorn and Gimli around the army and like go deal with these people, and they're dealing with the ones on the battering ram, giving them an objective like that where it's like, hey, you guys need to head into the command tent and like kill the general. Something like that gives them a much clearer goal. Those would be my suggestions. How's my week been? Week has been good. Oh, that wasn't for me. Well, my week has been good. I'm so glad that you asked how Amelia's week was. SciMonkey, go. Well, when you watch this, I'm glad you checked in. Feel free to play your game. But thank you for stopping in. I appreciate it. More people discussing that. Path Builder 2E. Oh, is this a I don't know what that is. Oh, is this a oh, it's like a D&D Beyond equivalent. Oh, interesting. Okay. I will have to look into that as well. Zanderoni, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is a very lovely message. Some of these are just lovely messages, which is really, really nice. Thank you so much. How do I feel about things that are high-tech in fantasy, like armor, artificer flying around, like a medieval Hamlet? The End King, I think if you have those people in your game, that is the story that you're telling, and if it bothers you, you know, ban the class, and if you're okay with it, then say, you know, this is the story that we're depicting. It just means that you have a different, it may not be the game that you were expecting to run, but that's kind of always going to be true. It's a trade-off, and where you individually land on it depends a lot on your style. For me, it hasn't really been much of an issue. It generally doesn't bother me because I can always like hand wave and say this is the only one in the world. I made a whole video about banning classes for a lot. The Artificer's a big part of that. But it doesn't bother me too much. It just depends a lot on my objectives. Like if I do a West Marches 5e game, I would be very like, well, I guess my feeling is if I wouldn't want those classes in the game, I'd probably run a Shadow Dark game. But if I'm okay with doing 5e, then that's part of the nature of it. For me, not everyone feels the same way. Do I have a favorite set of dice? I still have. Let's see if I can even figure out where it is. Yep, it's right here. Everything's fine. My very first set of dice, which is this one right here. These are the very first dice I ever got. I hope that they are showing up well on camera. They're probably not. There we go. Very simple, very straightforward. Pardon me. I still use these a lot. The other ones I have in my my normal dice tray are these ones, which I really, really like. Got some nice like fluctuations in them. That's all made into the die. And I've got some simple white ones. I may not keep these in this set, in this box, because they're not my favorite. And I want to have my favorites in this for when I start running more in-person games, which hopefully will be soon, knock on wood. Yeah, it would have been nice if Kima had more screen time. I'm probably going to wrap this up in about 5 or 10 minutes. Have I already decided what I'm going to do for my West Marches game to entice the party back home occasionally? Not quite yet. The answer is gonna be something like, I mean, I'm gonna have to tell them, like, you have to end the session by going back to town. It may just have to be one of the very few rules of the campaign. But I don't have much of more of an answer of that just yet. Tyra, yeah, I mean that's a valid point as well, is whether session 0 is for the players or the audience or DMs. But it depends on it's tough because you want to have a session 0 with your players and give them a safe space to talk about things, but you also want to do something for the audience to know what they're getting into. I don't think we as a community have quite found the right balance on that yet. Illuminated Stone Person, thank you so much. That was really kind of you. Oh, wow. Your Strahd is a plant. He gained 300 hit points from a sunbeam. All my socks are black, Tyler. Driver, start your engine. Yep. All right. I think I've caught up with a lot of questions. I may have missed a few, and I apologize for that, but I do. My voice is starting to go, so I can only live stream for so long. Any non-YouTube projects on the horizon? I'm going to start doing some paid GMing soon. And other than that, housework. No, I'm going to start doing more live streaming on Twitch as well. And I'm just starting to get the ball rolling on that. Like I said, my voice is starting to go, so I am going to wrap this up. Folks, thank you so much for hanging out. I really, really appreciate it. New video coming out tomorrow. It's about hit points and armor class. Next, what is it? Monday, I have a video coming out about building your character starting with your class, and then Critical Role Demystified, episode 27, coming next Thursday. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably go live again soon. I definitely have a live stream coming up on the first week of April. I don't know if I'll get a chance to go live again before then. I might try going live on Twitch soon, just see how that goes. Oh, I have a Patreon live stream coming up soon, where I'm actually going to be doing some world building on Sunday. So for members of the Patreon who are at $3 or more, I'm going to be using this to develop the gods for my setting. So if that interests you, check that out. That is going to be what is Sunday? Whatever Sunday's date is. Sunday is the there's a calendar over there, but I can't be bothered to get up. The 26th at 3 o'clock, so same time as this one. Michael, thank you so much. I'm really, really glad to hear that. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're watching this on the VOD, have a lovely day, and I will see you all very soon.